Welcome to this little coronavirus inspired live stream on Object Fit. So I've been talking a lot about style recently, and I have a lot like that I want to get out there. A lot of styling based stuff that I want to get out there. Um, so I thought, just since we're all cooped up, since I'm cooped up, there's a lot of people out there just at home, not being able to hang out with people during lunch. I thought, why the hell not? Just do a couple of these as live streams. So this will probably be like, I don't know, like 30-ish minutes or something like that. It won't be the whole hour that most people get for lunch. Um, and we'll just cover kind of like a one topic that I think is going to be super interesting. So today, what that's going to be is this idea of object fit, and we're going to talk about why it exists and how to use it. So first and foremost, why? Well, what happens a lot of times is we have this. We're going to start with this example right here. We have an image. This is just a standard HTML image tag, and it's getting this getting its image from a site called Place Kitten, which is great. Tons of kitten photos that you can use anywhere on the internet. Oh shoot! Hold on a second. I gotta switch to the screen. Okay. Um, Yep, RJ, I definitely hear you talking to the screen and realizing you can't hear me. Yeah, it's kind of weird actually. I've been doing a lot of Zoom calls, and then I can actually hear people talk to me. And so I forgot that during live streams I can't do that. So now that I have my screen up, we're gonna start with this image tag. Now it's a pretty standard image tag, which just has a source and then an alt. It says cute kitten, and this image is 200 by 300. Now we can do some things to it. So I'm just going to style this all images for now for the sake of example. But you would usually want like a class or something like that on this. And I'll say height is 200 pixels and the width is 200 pixels. Okay, so we're working on this one right here. Let me actually comment this out. For some reason, my comment isn't working on CodePen. Cool. So what we have here is we have this image and we've changed it to be a height of 200 pixels and a width of 200 pixels. We want it to be square. But you'll notice that as we changed that, it actually changed the proportions of the image. It made it much squattier, which is not what we want. That could be very unattractive if this were a picture of someone's face. So what ends up happening a lot of times is, whether this be on the server or whatnot, people will take this and they'll just inline a background image. Now, this is a totally cool thing that you can do with CSS. So in CSS, you do background image URL and then give it a URL. It's a really cool CSS property. Unfortunately, and so let's add some height and width to that to see how this solves the problem. Now, because CSS has a different mechanism for like placing images, and it by default keeps the aspect ratio, you see that this is in the correct aspect ratio, even though we're cropping it. So this right here is the desired result, and a lot of people use this to get it. Unfortunately, a lot of bad stuff happens when you do this. So we have this span, we're making an inline block, we're setting the height and width. It all works, but this is no longer accessible as an image. So while the aspect ratio is right, screeners don't know that this is an image, which kind of sucks. So this is a bad practice. So how do we get our image to behave like this, or with the proper aspect ratio? Well, this is where object fit comes into play. And this is a CSS property that you can use to kind of say where you would like that image to, or how you would like that image to size based on the aspect ratio and the size that you're trying to constrain it to. So we're going to use object fit right here. And it has a bunch of properties which I have put down here. The one that I really like in our case, and to match our example with the span, is cover. And so what that's going to do is going to try to just cover the entire space that we have available with the image, but then kind of pull it in so that it's not like too much or too little. So now there's a bunch of other properties that we have as well. So we can do something like, so we have all of these available to us. So let's just kind of go through those and see what's available based on different circumstances that we might have. We have fill, and so that's going to fill it. We have, and you just see these change as we go through this. And I have another example that's going to demonstrate these a little bit better, but I just want to show you all the options first. Now you can see that our 200 pixel box stayed the same, but now it's showing, it's pulling that whole, if this is our box, it's taking that whole image and putting it inside of the box and leaving some, like a, what do they call it, like letterbox kind of spaces on the side. We have cover, which you saw, which is going to kind of cover the whole space and try to fit it in as best that it can, but it will be cropping off, in this case, the top and the bottom. None is going to be our default, I believe. Not doing anything. And then scale down is kind of the opposite, in this case, of contain. It's going to work just like contain, but you'll see in the other example. In this case, it works exactly like contain. Cool. Now we also have another property, and so I'm going to put this back on cover real quick. And we have this other thing called object position, and object position pairs really nicely with object fit. It gets us the rest of what we would get with CSS and being able to place this image around. So right now we're on the center cut of this image, but I can actually do center for the XY axis and top for the Y axis. Sorry, X for the other one and top for the Y. And I didn't do that right. Let's see. Maybe it's the other way around. Top, center, contour. You get to see me struggle in these, which is always kind of fun. I used object fit again. Position. That's not going to work. Okay, there we go. So we are centering on the x-axis and we are going to the top on the y-axis. We can also go to the bottom. So this will go get more of the kitten's belly. Now we can also do pixel values, so we can really like nudge these things around. So let's do center, and then let's start with 0 pixels, and then let's go up by 100 pixels, or I guess we need to go minus 100 pixels. And you can see that if we go too far, so if we go like 300 pixels, we can actually push that image right off the edge of this thing. Now, where this comes into play is that if you had some kind of avatar tool that allowed you to kind of let your users kind of move their image around and maybe crop in or whatnot, you could use this to actually capture those values and then put those maybe directly on the element. So I could take this off here. And then for each image, if we had some type of data on that image, I could put some type of inline style and say object position is, let's say we left it center, but the user really wanted it to be like 100 pixels down. And so then that moves it like just kind of, where's that like really cute belly head shot, no paw. They don't like this little like, pink little nubbin on the paw right there. So anyway, that can be really helpful if you're trying to have some type of like avatar fixer and be able to get some data from the user and kind of spit that out on inline for every avatar in your system. Could be a cool way to handle that. Cool. Now I'm actually going to take this off because we've been able to achieve everything that we wanted to with this background image, but in a much more accessible way. Um, I'm also it just really bothers me that this is just on the image because that's going to be all images. So we'll do something like class avatar, and we'll put this on a class. Okay, take down that thing that we didn't want anymore. Cool. Awesome. Now we have this cute square image, and it's totally up to us how we size this. We could kind of put this back onto, like a different aspect ratio. Now, imagine now we have, now the width is wider than the height, but our image, on the other hand, is like taller than the width. So this is where some of these other properties come into play. So we got fill. We got, oh, I got some weird styling on here. Let's take that off real quick. Fill, contain, scale down. Now, one thing that's kind of funny about fill that you might have noticed is that it does warp the aspect ratio. So now that we're trying to like fill that space, it's going to do that like warping thing in like a really weird way. Not what we want in most cases. So again, I really like cover for this. That feels mostly what I expect most of the time. Okay, cool. So I want to show you now that we've learned how to do this object directly, how to how to manipulate this directly. I want to show you what it might look like if you were to have containing elements, like a containing div around these images. So let's work on that. Okay, so right now I have an image, and it is not getting the same styling as this one here because I've put that into a class. So this image doesn't have all of the default styling, except actually, yeah, I did it on accident before. Let's delete that and we'll remake it. Okay, so we have this image container, and it is constraining things to, or it's a box that's 200 pixels by 200 pixels. It has a background color of fuchsia, which I'm showing by putting this this little extra padding in there. So we're going to save that. So we have this fuchsia background. We want that to kind of pop through around the image. And then we are displaying it inline block, so it kind of sits next to this one. We're using box sizing border box. And actually, let me show you what that does. That's another property that we might cover at another time. But boxes by default in CSS are content based. So if we say the width and height of this are going to be 200 pixels, but then we add padding, well, the content is 200 pixels, but then we add 1 rem of padding on top of that. So we add 2 rems of padding on top of that. It just gets bigger and bigger. So now we're at 200 pixels plus 2 rems all the way around. Now, what that box sizing property does is it allows us to say, we don't want this to be a content constrained box. We want it to be a border constrained box. So that means that we're going to have our border, that's going to be inside the 200 pixels. Our padding is going to be inside the 200 pixels. Everything's going to push in when we use a border box. So I hit border box, save that. And now we have the actual bounds of this box are 200 pixels. And I'm going to change this back to 1 rem. Now, what we want is we want for this image to fit inside the bounds of our box, inside this one padding. So effectively, it's going to be like, I don't know, somewhere in the vicinity of 184, no, 16 and 16 is 32, 168 I don't know, pixels in size, but we don't want to have to specify that specifically. We just want it to figure it out. So we can do this. We'll say for our image container, we want to target direct children that are images. And then we're going to put our object fit property here. So we'll use cover again. And in order to take advantage of kind of the available space, I'm going to set this to 100 width, 100%, and height, 100%. Let's see if that did what we wanted to do. Chances are not, because I'm pretty bad at all of this live coding stuff. Okay, cool. Now it's bothersome that there's like a little bit of a gap here. Don't worry about that. If we actually, let's just do it. Div style. Let's just set it up on a grid. That's not going to work. Display grid. With display inline block elements, this space right here actually counts as a space. So there's like a little space kind of like knocking each element progressively further down the page, which is not ideal. But if you use like a display flex or grid, you can have means of like controlling the actual layout of that. So let's just do this flex. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, so now these images actually fit next to each other now that we're using a proper layout system. So we got that. Cool. So those are together. This is the proper size. And you'll notice with a border box, we can even put in a border. So we can do border 5 pixels solid black. And that's going to put a border around that. And without us having to do anything special, it's just going to, move the image in. And yeah, it's great. We can take, let's see. Oh, shoot. I hope that's not a problem. We can take this fuchsia padding off. That's going to put it back to the size that that fill that 200 pixel space. So we have a pretty cool system right here. We have this image container that allows us to put a a little border around our images, but then also we have this image that's going to just fit whatever space is available to it. So really cool stuff there. Now this kitten is a little high here, so I think what I'm going to do is change some of the object positioning. So object position. Oh, I got to put that in style. Oh, thanks, M. Sharif. Did I say that right? M. Sheriff? Let's see. So we have style. We're going to change this to object. What did I say? Position. And let's change this to center. I feel good about, but we're going to change this to top. Did I do that right? Did I do contour again? Object position, center, top. I'm one of those people who never quite remembers exactly the order of these things, and so I'm always just kind of like fiddling. I'm definitely that like align, center, justify content, center, just do it until it looks the way it's supposed to type of people. Okay, so what am I doing wrong here? Object position. Center, top. Let's put some specific values in here. Let's do like 0%. Okay, I feel like I'm getting something else wrong here. Let's take this off. Let's put it in here. Object position, center, top. Let's move it up. Why not? Why not? Let's see what happens. Nope, that didn't do it. I didn't think it would. Top left. Let's try something else. Oh, there we go. Oh, that's right. I forgot. This image is actually wider than it is. So let's change this. If I move this to scale down, we'll be able to see what this image actually looks like. So this image is actually wider than it is tall. That's why I was having trouble kind of moving it around. I actually need to move it around on the left and right because we're at the top of the image already. So I can go back over here and do object position. And let's move it a little bit more to the, let's get some like negative space on the left there. So we'll say left, center. Yeah, we'll keep it centered. And then we need to change this back to cover to make that cover the available space. There we go. Now I don't like it all the way over there. So let's say like 12.5%. A little bit more over, but not all the way over. 20%. Cool. Perfect. That looks good to me. Now, again, this is not something that only if you're like laying out like a marketing page or something like that are you going to be able to like really like fine tune a single image, which is fine. But like in an application, you're typically not going to be able to like, if you have, thousands of users, you're not going to be able to do this for every user unless you have some means for them to kind of customize and move around their own avatar inside of your app, capture that data, and then spit it out as a style attribute on that particular image. Now, it's actually pretty cool if you're able to do that. There are some products I think that would that allow you to capture some of that styling data and then spit it out on each of these elements. It's a totally cool thing to do. So as a recap, we started with this just general image, and we kind of like avatarized it. So we have an avatar. It's 200 pixels by 200 pixels. Object fit cover. And that allowed us to keep the aspect ratio appropriate, even though the image extends the bounds of our thing. We weren't squishing it down to fit. We were leaving it the size, but just kind of covering the area that we want. Then we kind of I showed you the really bad way to do this, which is to use a background image on a div or a span. Not recommended. Hate it so much that I deleted it. And then I showed you how we can do this same thing with a container. So we were able to put all of the styles that we wanted in a container. We were able to kind of add some extra padding, which is great, and then create an image inside of there that does the object fit cover, and then is just going to fit the available space. And we kind of proved that, but I'll do that again by changing this to 300. Now that's bigger, but the image still fits the available space. Okay, so I think that's about it. I wanted to show you a couple resources that I used. Object Fit, there's an article available on MDN. It has some really great illustrations here that will benefit you. Pretty much everything that we covered today. Love that. And then also there's another one on object position, which I recommend. It kind of shows you in a more illustrative way how these rules actually work. Super cool. And then finally, Place Kitten. If you need some kittens to play with, that is the best place to do it. So yeah, I think that's it. Are there any questions that you have? No, Internet Explorer does not support object fit. There are polyfills. Yes. So let's see. Let me get the right. Oh, cool. There we go. What's up? Y'all are on the screen now. Yeah, so Internet Explorer does not support object fit. So there are polyfills. Let's see. Let's see if we can find one right now. Internet Explorer object fit. So Edge does, which is great. Honestly, in our case, we kind of like treated this as like a progressive enhancement. So actually, we don't really support IE anymore. But when we did, we just kind of treated it as like a progressive enhancement. Kind of had just a standard fallback, and then had the more like fancy version. Just doing this. So yeah, yeah. So there's some CSS solutions out there if you want to kind of like do all this. I definitely recommend, as much as you can, treating things as progressive enhancements. At least in our case, the number of IE users who were using IE was so low that we didn't want to add a bunch of polyfills for like just for to cover this case. So as long as they were seeing kind of like a moderate representation of what the avatar was supposed to look like, we were kind of like fine with that because it's like for us it was like 2% of people. Um, and yeah, I think that's about it. Let's see if there's anything else we got. But yeah, RJ, thank you. That is a good point to be made. Yeah, I think that's it. This code sandbox is available if you want to not set up your own project. If you want to play with it, I will put it in the chat here. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah, cool. Has all the links that you'll need. As always, if you want to hit me up after this live stream, you can, I guess, comment on the live video that this ends up being, or hit me up on Twitter. I'm Chantastic. And yeah, it's been good hanging out with you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your lunch. Thank you for spending part of it with me. I hope you learned something.